Hi YouTube, this is Pertaining to Rose with Marion Lynch, and this is part 3 of our series. We're talking about testimony and learning to pray for yourselves and your loved ones or your animals. And I wanted to bring up 2 verses that is kind of helps you understand this. The first one here is Ezekiel 16:6. And the Appalachian people often use this verse to stop bleeding. It says, "When I passed by you and saw you polluted in your own blood, I said unto you, when you was, or where you was, in your blood, live. Yea, I said unto you, when you was in your blood, live." That is a verse that the Appalachian people often use to stop bleeding. And I use it quite often. If you look it up in several different Bibles, you'll get different versions of it, and you might find it easier to say. I kind of personalize it for myself. I personalize all my Bible verses for myself or for people I'm praying for. And the second one I wanted to bring up is 2 Kings 13:21. And it says, "And it came to pass, as they were burying a man, and they cast the man into the sepulchre," I can't say it, sepulchre of Elijah. That's where Elijah was buried. "And when the man was let down and touched the bones of Elijah, he revived and stood on his feet." So Elijah was a very powerful prophet, and when this man's dead body touched the bones of Elijah, where Elijah was buried, he came to life. That's pretty powerful. You can believe on these Bible verses for yourself, and they do work. Seriously, keep that one in mind. Maybe come in a little closer. There you go. And we'll get back to our testimonies now, but I wanted to bring those 2 Bible verses out to you. And there's many more. Many more in the Bible like that.
It's good to have someone that's well versed in the Bible with you. It really is. Most of my understanding of the Bible is through experiencing with the Lord the reality of it, But it's good for her, the way God works with her. That's probably the way He works with you and works with me, but it's different for each one because we're not the same. I can remember my first time I preached before 50 women, and the pastor said to me, "Well, my church has church on Sunday, twice, on Wednesday, and they do things on Thursday and Friday. Now this is how many times they are with the Lord in church work." And he says, "So if you can take them on a Monday and you can get any of them to come out," he says, "you'll be doing well." Well, 50 of them came out. And it was marvelous because I was just so brand new and talking to anybody. And I remember one of the girls, she was 18 years old. And after I got done, she said, "If I ever doubted my knowledge of the Bible," she says, "I didn't doubt it when I listened to you, because every word that comes out of your mouth is biblical." She says, "Everything you talk about is in that Bible." And, I often thought that if somebody were next to me and they could bring out the scriptures as God gives it to them while I was talking, you would understand more, because I can't do both. A lot of times I felt that you interrupted what God was doing if you took the verse and wrote the verse inside the book, when you should have put it in the footnotes for people to look it up and separate that and start studying what God was saying. Because a lot of people, their mind can't go there, and they get confused, and then they get bored, and then because they're not getting the real message. The real message should be told straight out. It should be told with understanding and experience. I mean, it's I've been blessed, and I know that many of you have had relationships with God and been through things, and like this one woman also told me whenever she was watching me and listening to me preach, and how many things God had healed in me. Like I said, it's in the book, and I went on to many, many more tremendous healings. And she said she was the only one that sat there and put her hands on her head and just kept going. And she'd look up and she'd go. And I didn't ask her what was wrong, but she came to me afterwards and told me. She said, I'm sitting there and I know all 50 of these women. And she said, and all of them had been through tremendous trials. And she said, and each one of them had one thing wrong. Each one of them had one of the things that was wrong with you. And it was almost overwhelming, and you had them all. And look at you, you're standing here like nothing ever happened. And that is because, like I've said, when you put him in here and you put him in here, he doesn't leave. He doesn't, he'll, how I put him in here is in my communion with him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't put him in by memorization, which memorization is good, because the Word of God can rise up and fight for you. But I didn't put him in there like that. I put him in there between him and I, where we had this relationship that I knew he understood me, that I would never harm anybody or hurt anybody or go against him in any way. I'd rather die. He knew that. He understood that. But yet he knew I was filled with all this pain, all of this scars, all of this memory of all of it. And just the day we live in, everybody has that. Everybody has it from their childhood. You stop and you think about what's happening in a nation where all of these politicians know there is only two genders. They know it. But yet they allow all of this garbage to go into the schools and all this garbage to say differently everywhere. You know why? It's to their advantage monetarily. It's to their advantage. They don't care about you. They don't care if you live. They don't care if you die. They don't care what happens to your children.
Right.
All they care about is the money they're going to get, the prestige, the honoring them. Oh, you're really something because you're a representative. You're a congressperson. You're a senator. You're a Supreme Court. You're the leaders of this nation. They
receive money under the table to
Yes,
pass those
that's
bills.
right. And that's where I say that the scripture says, your leaders lie to you and you love to have it so. I always remember in 1 Samuel how they went to him and said to Samuel, we want a king. But he says, you got God. They were a nation that had God, the only nation that had God. But they wanted a king. They wanted to be like everybody else. Now, if God come to me and he personally separated me, I can remember being with God for a period of 10 solid years, where he talked to me morning, noon, and night. There are some times I never slept. There are some times I never ate, because I could hear his voice within me talking all the time about everything. He talked to me about everything. Everything in my life, everything in your life, everything in the nation, everything. He just talked and talked. At the end of that time, he said, do you know how many people will take the time to listen to what I have to say? He said, I'll tell you, the way you listen, he says, none. Well, and at that time, he meant it, none. I'm too busy, I have this job. Well, I was fortunate. I did not have my daughter living at home. He was always busy with something else. I was by myself. And so I could spend, and I just loved it to be with him. He was my best friend. He was my everything. He still is. And like I said, I sat across the table from him many times. I would turn and I could feel his robe and I would hit into it. And because if I suddenly turned, I just smacked right into him. And so this is, I don't know how he calls you. I don't know what he does with you. But I know one thing, if he's laid something on your heart, nurture it. When he called me a prophet, I didn't just say, I'm a prophet. I went and studied what a prophet is, why he called me a prophet, what a prophet does, where they go, what they think, how they pray, I studied that before him and wanted to know why he would do that. That's his calling. That was something he did. And I would have people say to me, well, Marian, I just think I missed the boat. I went into Jeremiah and it just leaped out at me that God called me to be a prophet. And I said, well, you know, if God didn't come in all his power and all his glory, where you're so terrorized from head to toe, where your flesh can't bear to be in his presence, if he didn't come like that and call you a prophet, chances are you're not. If it leaped out at you, that's not how he does it. It leaps out at you and tells you, I called you to be a prophet because the word personally reached out and touched you. That's not how he called me. When God called me, I'll never forget it. He says to me, you see this mountain? It was a little hill to him. I could see Jesus standing there pointing at it. And when he said, you see this mountain? Before me was this huge mountain. I couldn't see above it. I couldn't see nothing. It was just so huge. And he looked at me and smiled and he says, that's you. You and I are going to go climb that mountain. And I thought, okay, I trust you. That's what you say. And then he says to me, he says, you see this woman? And he put a flash before me. And all the picture of the woman was very horrible in her mind. Because I was really sick. And I went, ooh, that's awful. And he says, but that's you. And he says, but that's okay. You and I are going to overcome that. We are going to overcome you. And I thought, wow, you know, that's me. I'm going, oh, goodness, Lord. But he would say that to me. I would overcome you. I thought that was the dog kicking on the door. So when he did that, he just smiled. We're going to do this. And he said, Marian, and he always called me by name. He said, Marian, if you will listen to me and pay attention to the things I say to you and work with me, because I begged him, I have to interrupt this and say, I begged him, don't call me to be a preacher. Don't call me to ever pastor a church. Every pastor I knew in that whole area, they were all sinning. You could see them. This one run off with that one. This one was doing that. This after 20 years of serving God, 30 years of serving God. And I said,
we all missed the mark.
Yeah. And I said, God, I don't want that to happen to me. That means that Satan has the power at a certain time in your life after you serve God for a while. And then he could come in and take you and do what he wants to with you. So I'm not going there. Don't you dare call me. I'm telling God. You know, I explained it to him. And that's when he said to me, Marian, that's when he brought the thing to me that this is you and I'm going to overcome you. And if you will listen to me and obey me, I will fix it. So I will be so instilled in your heart that you will never fall because I'm too deep embedded in that heart. And he did just that. That's why I'm able to have the power to stand there and say, not a blade of grass.
That's right.
Not this. That's how I know it, because him and I know each other. And when I was bombarded by the demonic forces that took my mother's mind, and I was a little girl, saw those demons and didn't know what they were, and I saw them torture her, and I didn't know what that was. And then I was being beat by my dad, and I was going through horrible things with my grandmother who tried to kill me at the age of 10. And I went through all of these things as a little girl. And then I grew up until I was 30 years old. I did not know there was a God. I only knew hell. I didn't know God. So I had been tormented and bombarded. And I would tell you, nothing that the devil had ever done to my life was as bad as going into church and finding out Christians are not Christians, that they lie, that they cheat, that they compete, that they do this. the disappointment and the pain of it was so great, I couldn't bear it.
Mm-hmm.
My life was a living hell. And as bad as that was, I couldn't bear what was happening in
Right.
church. Just almost destroyed me. And I went before God and told him, I'm not going there. If I'm going to fall 20 years from now, I'm not going there.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm going to keep you so close to me, that's not going to happen. So he took me aside to sanctify me, to make me holy. But when he did it for years. He did it, and he had to heal my mind, because my mind was so blown away, and so much misery, and so much, I can honestly say I was insane.
We're almost to 16.
Okay, so I was near insane, and I saw things that weren't there. I heard things, and I was literally going out of my mind when he appeared to me. And when he came to me, I didn't believe in the Catholic religion. I saw my